So anyway, this is a wild ride. This is bonkers bizarre to read. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, Hexes and Horrors. Today we are doing a little roundup of my favorite true crime books that I own. I originally was going to do one larger video of some of all my favorite books from a few different spooky genres, true crime, horror, mystery, that kind of thing. But then I decided to separate them into different videos just in case people have a particular interest so they don't need to sit through reviews and information about books they're not really into. So this one is going to be true crime specific. So if you're interested in true crime books, definitely keep watching. And if you're not, keep watching anyway because maybe you'll become interested in one of them. So this is a little outside of my typical content, I would say. I don't really create content so much about the books that I'm reading. I do definitely post what I'm reading, communicate with people in kind of that like bookstagram community, but I don't really post and create content specifically around reading. However, I absolutely love reading. I always have since I was a child. I'm a language arts teacher, so that definitely falls in with my love for reading. And obviously I love horror, true crime, all kinds of spooky things. So we're going to get started and go through some of my favorite true crime books. I also have on my Read More Books shirt, my little ghosty. I usually wear that to work because, again, language arts teacher. I'm going to move a little closer for this. Anyway, let's get started. The first true crime book that I'm talking about is If I Did It, Confessions of the Killer by Kim and Fred Goldman. So I'm starting off strong with this one because this one is wild. If you have not read this book and you're into true crime, this is an absolute must read. So this is about the O.J. Simpson case. Ron Goldman and Nicole Simpson obviously were the victims in that case. Fred and Kim Goldman are the authors. But there's a catch. They're actually not really the authors because O.J. Simpson is the author. Let me explain if you don't already know about this. Basically what happened is O.J. Simpson, after he was obviously acquitted, thought it would be a fantastic idea to write a book chronicling what and how he would have gone about the crime if he killed Nicole Simpson and Ron Goldman. Yeah. And then he titled the book If I Did It. So just let that sink in for a quick minute. It doesn't really seem like the greatest idea to me to write a book like that after you were acquitted of a double homicide in one of the nation's largest, most televised, most watched cases in history. Why would you do that? I don't know who advised him to do that. I don't know who gave him the okay. I have a lot of questions about that. But basically, the Goldmans caught wind of what he was doing and swooped in there and got the rights to the book. So after they got the rights to the book, they actually kept his same title, If I Did It, but they put the if super, super, super tiny. See if you can see it in the top of the I. And then underneath If I Did It, they then added Confessions of the Killer, clearly indicating their opinion and I would say many people's opinion on the case. Everyone's got their opinion about the O.J. Simpson case. But that's what they decided to do with the cover is keep the if super, super tiny. So it now looks like the title is I Did It, Confessions of the Killer, which was very clever of them. And obviously they gave that little subtitle, Confessions of the Killer, making it pretty clear that he is confessing to a crime in this book, at least as far as they are concerned. So very controversial case, controversial book as well. And like I said, it is a wild, wild ride. You are reading O.J. Simpson's words when you read this book, and my jaw was on the floor. Again, why would anyone write some of the things that he wrote if you are trying to maintain your innocence after you were acquitted of this horrific, crazy, crazy case? So this is part of the introduction that I'm going to read to you just so you have a sense of how wild this was when this book came out. So introduction, The Goldman Family, August 2008. If I Did It, a book so controversial that HarperCollins canceled it and destroyed 400,000 copies, was published on September 13th, 2007, with our names on the cover. So this is, again, coming from the Goldmans. In the wake of its publication, we received daily, sometimes hourly updates about how the book was moving up the bestsellers list. Between Amazon, the Wall Street Journal, and the New York Times, we were steadily climbing at a rapid pace, hot on the heels of Bill Clinton's book, Giving. And each time we received an email with the subject line number 4, we hit delete. A year after its initial publication, we are still not able to fully embrace the success of this book. We continue to struggle with the notion that our name is attached to a book written by the beast that killed Ron and Nicole. So to have the book be successful for whatever reason provokes an internal conflict. This is another little excerpt from the introduction. We realized that we would have to attach our family name to a book written by a killer who was confessing to Ron's and Nicole's murders, and then we would be asked to endorse it. Obviously, everyone knows that O.J. Simpson was acquitted. It's still a controversial case. There's still a lot of debate about it. However, even though he was acquitted of that crime, he was found guilty in a civil case. As far as I know, the Goldman family has still never received the compensation that they were awarded in the civil case from O.J. Simpson. I think that's still an ongoing issue, which I believe is also mentioned in this book. I read this several years ago. I should probably reread it soon. But yeah, if you didn't know, he was found guilty of their murders in a civil case. So anyway, this is a wild ride. This is bonkers bizarre to read. If you're into that case or just true crime in general, this is a really good one. All right, the next one that I have is called The Innocent Man, Murder and Injustice in a Small Town. This one is by John Grisham. This was also a wild read. This one chronicles how innocent people become convicted of crimes and imprisoned for them when they never had anything to do with the crime. So I'll read you just the inside flap so you have an idea of what it's about. In the Major League Draft of 1971, the first player chosen from the state of Oklahoma was Ron Williamson. When he signed with the Oakland A's, he said goodbye to his hometown of Ada and left to pursue his dreams of big league glory. 6 years later, he was back, his dreams broken by a bad arm and bad habits, drinking, drugs, and women. He began to show signs of mental illness. Unable to keep a job, he moved in with his mother and slept 20 hours a day on her sofa. So this is about someone who became a pro athlete and then it all kind of came crashing down. I didn't know who he was before reading this book, but maybe you do if you're into sports. This is the rest of it. In 1982, a 21-year-old cocktail waitress in Ada named Deborah Sue Carter was raped and murdered, and for 5 years, the police could not solve the crime. For reasons that were never clear, they suspected Ron Williamson and his friend Dennis Fritz. The two were finally arrested in 1987 and charged with capital murder. With no physical evidence, the prosecution's case was built on junk science and testimony of jailhouse snitches and convicts. Dennis Fritz was found guilty and given a life sentence. Ron Williamson was sent to death row. If you believe that in America you are innocent until proven guilty, this book will shock you. If you believe in the death penalty, this book will disturb you. If you believe the criminal justice system is fair, this book will infuriate you. So this one, again, was very shocking to read. Obviously, we know that the justice system does not always provide justice, and we also know that a lot of innocent people are convicted and sent to prison for years, their lives completely upturned and ruined, to only find out years later that they actually are innocent and then they're released. It's a pretty big problem, obviously, but actually reading about one or two people's individual experiences with that was really eye-opening. I learned a lot that I did not know about the justice system. I learned a lot about the laws and just the process of them trying to continuously appeal their case. And like the book said, it definitely shocked me, disturbed me, and infuriated me. So this one's, again, really eye-opening. I think it's a good and important read. And it does chronicle a true crime case, of course, with the focus being on someone who was wrongfully convicted. The Innocent Man by John Grisham. This one also kind of holds a special place in my heart because I believe that I acquired this book from my aunt's Manhattan apartment after she had passed away of cancer. So my brother and I went to help my dad clean it out and kind of get her things together. And this book was one of the things that I took with me. All right. Next up, we have another incredibly popular, captivating case. Whole nation knows about it, knew about it, tuned in for it. Not the O.J. Simpson case, but we're taking it back to 1969, the Manson murders. So this book is Helter Skelter, the true story of the Manson murders by Vincent Bugliosi. It is touted as the #1 true crime bestseller of all time. I had not read this book until last year, 2023, and I don't know how I waited so long. I really thought I knew everything about the Manson cases. What did I know? What did I know? This book is so incredibly detailed. You will find things in here that you probably, just like me, never knew about this case. It chronicles the entire case from beginning to end, beginning before the case even started, before the Manson family was a cult. It takes it all the way back, goes through the history of how the family even came to be, Manson's history himself, all the way up to the crimes themselves and the case that followed. So Vincent Bugliosi was a deputy district attorney for Los Angeles County at the time that the Manson murders took place. So he is, of course, very familiar with everything that went down. He helped investigate the case, and he himself prosecuted the Tate LaBianca killers. I also really liked this book because besides detailing the entire case and everyone involved in it from beginning to end, it also talked a lot just about the era and the decade of the 60s itself. It talked a lot about kind of the end of an era, the end of the 60s when 1969 was coming to a close and people were moving into the 70s, and how this particular case kind of was the catapult for that ending of an era, and how it brought a lot of darkness to the end of the 60s. I absolutely love learning about prior decades, time that I wasn't alive for, points in time that I wish I was alive for. So that being incorporated into the book was a lot of fun for me to be able to read, and just kind of seeing how this case affected not only the people directly tied to it, but the nation as a whole. So if you have not read Helter Skelter and you're a true crime junkie like me, this one also is a must read. It is pretty long, I will say that. It is just about 700 pages. There are also some fun little facts at the end of the book that helped me with actually creating some fun TikTok series. I believe this is where I got the idea to create my TikTok series, Celebrity Connections to True Crime, because they talked in this book about how Trent Reznor of Nine Inch Nails recorded the downward spiral in the Tate household after the crimes obviously had been committed. And that just kind of gave me the idea for that series that I do, if you know what that series is. And if you don't, then you can check out my TikTok and see some interesting celebrity connections to true crime. All right, next up we have Blood on the Table, the greatest cases of New York City's Office of the Chief Medical Examiner. My mother-in-law gave me this book as a gift, I think for Christmas one year. I haven't really read many books that detail forensics or autopsies, so I wasn't sure about this one, but after reading it, I absolutely loved this book. I'm so glad that she got this for me. This book goes through tons and tons of different criminal cases from the 1800s up until 2001. It talks about different technological advancements that made autopsies more efficient. It talks about all the different possibilities for human error in forensic work and autopsies. It also goes back to the time when things weren't so efficient, and pretty much a random person would just be designated as the chief medical examiner, which actually still happens in a lot of counties around the country, where the medical examiner is just someone who holds a political position in the town or city or state, who actually has zero experience with forensics and autopsies, which is just crazy to even think about. So this book talks a lot about that and how People started to create more efficient practices, and there were actual positions and schooling and training for these things. It talks about all the different flaws that existed within the chief medical examiner's office and how certain people tried to better those flaws, correct them, make it better, the pushback that there was, the back and forth, and just takes you through time to see how things have changed to what they are today. They also talk about a lot of corruption, of course, that existed within the medical examiner's office. People turning a blind eye, people paying each other off. I think the term, not body snatchers. Oh, I can't think of the term, but there is a term for that, where people would sell bodies to schools of science, sell cadavers to people using them for experimentation and for practicing on, but the people selling the cadavers had actually murdered those people. So again, just corruption. I'm just going to read a quick little blip from the back cover of the book. Founded in 1918 as an attempt to halt corruption within the coroner industry, the OCME has been marked by decades of both triumphant technological advancements and all too human failures to evolve into its modern day incarnation, bearing an average caseload of more than 15,000 suspicious deaths a year. This is the behind-the-scenes chronicle of public service and private vendettas, of blood in the streets and backroom bloodbaths, and of the criminal cases that made history and headlines. From crimes of passion to tragic acts of fate, the New York City OCME has seen and solved almost every crime imaginable. And it has survived to become the foremost forensics lab in the world. So not only does it chronicle autopsies, forensic science, the medical examiner's office, the corruption within, but it also goes through several different true crime cases along the way. Everything possibly imaginable that could take place in New York City. And if you know, you know. New York is just, it's just a different world, at least the city. I didn't grow up there. I grew up just outside the city, and I lived there briefly in Brooklyn, but I have seen enough. I will give a warning that the end of this book details 9/11 and details it in a way I had never, ever heard before. I think there's a lot of things about 9/11 that we all know, but kind of push back in our minds and push to the bottom of our brains because we don't want to think about them. So it's kind of like a graphic content warning if you do read this book, that the last section is all about 9/11. And again, we're talking about autopsies, forensic science, all of that. So how can I say this? I think we all, again, know, but don't think about often, the fact that bodies from 9/11 were very rarely found intact. And that's all I'll say. So there was just a lot of very, very graphic descriptions of them locating bodies, locating body parts, different things that they saw and found in the days following 9/11. So just be aware of that. I wasn't quite ready for that. It was very intense, but again, a great book. So this one again is A Blood on the Table by Colin Evans. I don't think I mentioned the author's name at the beginning. And we are on to our last true crime book. Now, this one may be a little controversial because I don't think that too many people think of this case as true crime. We're talking about a school shooting. While school shootings are technically true crime, I think we put them into a different category of school shootings or national tragedies or whatever we label them as. But I do think that they still fall in with that true crime genre. And I think that we can go about talking about them with sensitivity and know that they are both. They are national tragedies, they are school shootings, and they are also true crime incidents. So this one is Columbine. That is the title of the book. I think it's pretty bright because of the lighting. So there we go. If you can see just the title right there. Columbine. This is by Dave Cullen. It was a New York Times bestseller. It's a pretty popular book. I'm not going to hold it up the whole time because this just looks really bright from what I'm seeing on the screen. I don't know what to say about this book. I put it on this list because I thought it was a really detailed description of the entire case, just like Helter Skelter was. It does a good job of not going into any details about the state that victims were found in. It's not gory in that sense. At least from what I remember from reading it. I did read this several years ago, but it does just give a detailed account of who each person was that was involved with Columbine. I'm talking about victims, teachers, the killers themselves, the family of the killers, families of the victims. It really gives you a profile of each person involved in the case, survivors as well, because there were a lot of survivors that are now able to look back and speak on what they experienced. I know that Columbine is, at least for my generation, a very sort of pivotal and important case, like the O.J. Simpson case, like the Manson murders for the 60s. This is kind of the school shooting that everybody knows and talks about. And today it might be different because unfortunately we've had so many happen that, you know, other people might think of Sandy Hook or Parkland instead. But this is still the one that I always think of when the topic is brought up, because this one, all of them are so chilling. But I think I've really gone down the rabbit hole on this one, which maybe I shouldn't have done because it was really disturbing and morbid, like any case like this would be. But, you know, a lot of the things that you find online or in articles really just detail a more broad scope of what happened. This goes into so much detail about these people's personal lives. Again, we're talking the victims, families, survivors, killers, all of them. Super, super detailed, gives like a daily account sometimes of what was happening in their lives at school and outside of school. You just, reading it, I kind of felt like I was back in high school, and it made it really easy to relate to everyone in this book that was spoken about, because there's such human experiences that you're reading about. I don't know, this one's kind of hard to talk about. I won't say it's a good book because obviously it's about something so horrific, but I think that Dave Cullen did a really good job of navigating around the parts of Columbine that everybody already knows about and detailing different things about these people, showing you who the victims were, showing you who the survivors were and who they are today. You really get an inside look into their lives. I will say, so I know I already said that this wasn't graphic in the sense of detailing any like kind of gore or the state of the victims afterwards. There's a graphic part where it does detail what happened in the library. And if you know the case, you obviously already know what happened in the library. It gives the story from people's perspectives who survived of what they saw, what they heard, and what they were thinking the entire time, as well as what the killers were saying and doing in real time. That is something that I never want to be privy to, is this perspective of someone hiding for their life and what they're witnessing around them. But it also makes it very real, and I think it is important as well because obviously this continues to happen today. And there are so many people in this country who have had that same exact experience of waiting and watching and huddling and hiding and witnessing what's going on around them. So this one's the heaviest one out of all the ones I shared for me personally. There's just, again, something about this case that is so chilling to me. Okay, so sorry to end it on kind of a bummer note. I'm gonna just give you a quick recap of all the books we talked about today and send you on your way. If I Did It, Confessions of the Killer by Fred and Kim Goldman, The Innocent Man by John Grisham, Helter Skelter by Vincent Bugliosi, Blood on the Table by Colin Evans, And lastly, we had Columbine by Dave Cullen. Thank you guys so much for watching as always. Let me know in the comments if you have read any of these books or if you have questions about anyone in particular. And let me know, please, what your favorite true crime books are so that I can put them on my reading list. Thank you so much. Like this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe below if you're not subscribed already to my channel. And I'll see you guys soon.